Hey, well, welcome to the Power of Uplifting Words and Images with our wonderful guest, Kitty Jaspe. Kitty is a docent at the Memorial Art Gallery, and I think she said that she has been for 23 years. She's also the moderator of Poetry Oasis at the Central Library, which I'm happy to say is coming back in December. And I will put a link to that information in the chat. She's moderator of the OPEN program at the Pittsford Library. She's also a published poet, and a lot of her works are available through the Monroe County Library System, so you can check those out for sure. We are having a little time for discussion at the end of the program, so if you have any comments or questions, you can put them into the chat. You'll see the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. I'll be taking a look at the chat, and I can write down any of your questions and give them to Kitty at the end of the program. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Kitty. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Although we're virtual, I'm really excited that we can be brought together. I can't see all of you all at once, but afterwards, when I stop sharing my screen, I will be able to. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kitty, and I'm here today to share uplifting words and images. My hope is that they will confirm that art is a bridge that allows people to share what is alive, what it is to be alive. In poetry, feelings, observations, wonderings allow our imaginations to call attention to the ordinary, as in Van Gogh says in a letter to his brother. Find things beautiful as much as you can. Most people find too little beautiful. So we need to do that, keep finding the beauty. So join me in thanking our Rundell and Central Library for arranging an opportunity to share with you a sample of what I find uplifting words and images. In the flyer that I sent out, I quoted William James, "Act as if it makes a difference," because it does. By sharing things of beauty, stories and words that move our hearts, stir our hearts, it allows the spirit to rise, and that in turn touches the core of our shared humanity. So the image on this opening slide shows brushstrokes from the Van Gogh painting, but perhaps up close it doesn't look beautiful. And we'll look now at a larger picture. Perhaps you can see the technique of those brushstrokes from the last slide in the trees. It's the small bits that make the bigger picture. I paired the Van Gogh with a short poem by Langston Hughes. Many of you may know already his words, "Hold fast to dreams," and his question, "What happens to a dream deferred?" in his poem Harlem. He understands the importance of dreams, without which life is a broken winged bird, a barren field frozen with snow. Here we have the dream keeper. "Bring me all of your dreams, you dreamer. Bring me," oh, you know what? This is a problem. I just encountered, here we go. "Bring me all of your dreams, you dreamer. Bring me all of your heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth, away from the too rough fingers of the world." Both the artist and the poet share with us the feel of a world where no man will scorn another man, where love will bless the earth. Poetry, like art, is a tool for understanding. This photograph is by John Ritalik, professional photographer, a retired RIT professor, and also an attendee at the sessions of poetry at Rundell from time to time. There's much happening in this image of large blooms of blue hydrangea framed in a cloud-dotted blue sky. Just like a poem where the depth of meaning comes from the way words are crafted together, worked with sound and rhythms, the picture of a picture plays with our eye and imagination. And this brings me to the next quote. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. And I could add perhaps how you see. Art is unquestionably one of the purest and highest elements in human happiness. It trains the mind through the eye and the eye through the mind. Often, a poem begins with an observation. Something catches our eye. And as you look at this photograph, also by John Retallack, what do you notice? Perhaps you could put it in the chat and we can discuss it later. I invite you to consider that this is no ordinary white picket fence caught in a moment of sunlight. Our imagination allows us to create the magic of extraordinary. So my question to you is, how would you make this vision of the fence extraordinary? Now, I'll share with you my vision. White turns to light pickets, just out of reach of 3 roses. Crooked front teeth flash before an upper lip of evening. Who were the lucky ones? Those singled out by the sun, or those passed over? This is not about fences, futility of what we think to keep out or in, but about stakes, how to set them up. In keeping with that, the flagstone echoes what a poem should do in the following Chinese proverb. A bird does not sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. This is one of the several inscribed flagstones in Ralph Avery Park in the Cornhill area on Plymouth Avenue, near where Ralph used to live and work. The park is named for his nationally famous and much loved local artist, who also taught in the creative workshop at the Memorial Art Gallery, where you can see a collection of his work online. This is one of his watercolors. Poetry and art are not about providing answers, telling facts. There's much more in this painting than a mere bridge or a mere river. Whether or not you're drawn into it, there is a companionship, something of one human being shared with you, inviting you to participate in a unique view of a moment. It's just like reading a poem. One is not alone, but connected to another. This poem celebrates the uplifting feel of nonsense. It's one of my favorites for the sheer joy of the sound of it. Perhaps you can mumble with me, but 'twas brillig and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jubjub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. Now, however slithy toves dance and gyre and gimble, we know they do so. And in the poem, of course, a hero slays a monster with eyes of flame. And congratulations are in order to the boy who kills him. So it goes on, come to my arms, my beamish boy, oh, frabjous stay, calloo, calais. And we don't need to know what frabjous is. It means fabulous, joyful, and glorious all at once. Just reading the poem slays any possibility of any negative or any monster. In Alice in Wonderland, it's Humpty Dumpty who explains made-up words like Borogove. He defines it this way: a fictional bird, thin, shabby, feathers sticking out all around, rather like a live mop. So you can guess perhaps how they are mimsy. New word for you. Another bit of fun in poetry is making images using the words themselves, as in this pair of scissors. Concrete poetry allows the visual to support something larger than simply the words as they create an image. Here, you may see the smaller words, bit, smaller, rip, more, falling, and of course the word snip at the crossroads, spelling out the cutting act. The scissors formed from these words are open, ready to rip, so to speak, into action. But of what sort? We don't see fallen pieces, and yet each word feels disjointed, cut from something larger, yet not discarded. The words are assembled and reassembled for a bigger purpose. In this poem, the title sounds like a scientific essay and gives a visual illustration of the action of a wave. How does everything happen? So I'm going to read it to you and try to use theatrical hands. When nothing is happening, something is stacking up to happen. When it happens, something pulls back not to happen. When pulling back happens, stacking up has happened. When it has happened, something pulls back while nothing stacks up. Then something stacks up, pushes forward, and happens. I hope you find this as delightfully witty as I do. But what is the major question? How does anything happen? The visual placement of the words capture the idea of a world in flux. Poetry. It helps us see with new eyes. The next uplifting poem has a quote from St. Augustine as title. Love calls us to the things of this world. You might wonder why I have a picture of laundry, but you will see. It's a favorite of mine because of the unusual way of describing angels in a most unexpected situation of an outdoor laundry line. Do you see them yet? Probably not from the picture, but you will with the poem. I love that poetry allows us to see something quite commonplace, such as clean laundry hung out to dry from the viewpoint of the soul. Love calls us to the things of the world. The eyes open to a cry of pulleys, and spirited from sleep, the astounded soul hangs for a moment, bodiless and simple as false dawn. Outside the open window, the morning air is all awash with angels. Some are in bed sheets, some are in blouses, some are in smocks. But truly, there they are. Now they are rising together in calm swells of halcyon feeling, filling whatever they wear with the deep joy of their impersonal breathing. You'll see I put the O's in blue, outside and open, and the O in window. And I've put the A's in orange for air, awash, and angels. How effortless these alliterations are, outside and open, air, all awash, and the angels, and tying the two halves together, the W's in awash and windows. Now, you have the setting. What is next? Before I go into it, I want to tell you a little bit about the word halcyon, which is used. We often use this with perfect blue skies. It comes from the Greek for kingfisher and alukuon, and denotes a period of time in the past that was idyllically happy and peaceful. So in the poem, it describes a feeling inspired by the soul seeing the clothing on the line filled with angelic presence. Halcyon. But then the poem goes on. Just to summarize, Wilbur masterfully uses sound play and illusions such as rosy and rising. And in the Iliad, rosy is of course used for the fingers of dawn. This emphasizes the beginning of a new day and awakening, reinforced by slant rhymes and the alliterative D's of dancing, which will descend to earth swooning down. All of this to say the soul does not want memory of bad things. It wants to wash away any sin, implores all the cleansing involved with laundry, as if offering a prayer for us all. If the laundry line is a gallows, perhaps a crucifix, the clothing has been prepared for everyone, whether thief or lover. The poem ends with pure floating of dark habits, not just the heavy dress of a nun, but our own implied abstract version of habits that can knock us off balance. I hope you'll look this up to read slowly again and again. When you finish, I don't think you'll look at laundry quite the same way, and perhaps you might be on the lookout for how else the air might be awash with angels. It certainly transformed my life. Now for opening lines. As with fiction or nonfiction, a great opening line in poetry should be compelling, urgent, and/or unusual. The main key to a successful opening is that the reader should want to continue reading to find out what happens after that first line. Let me share with you the first line from John Masefield's Sea Fever. You might know it. I must go down to the seas again. And maybe already you're saying the first verse. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea in the sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And beautiful rhythmic lines. And he keeps repeating, I must go down to the seas again. And he keeps repeating, and all I ask. He lures us with a mesmerizing rhythm. My favorite is the second stanza. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. Last lines are just as important. Not only does a poem need a compelling start, but there should also be an unforgettable ending, like Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods. The charming detail of the horse giving the harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake provides a foil for the fact that most people are just too busy to appreciate the beauty and mystery of the world around us. So you probably all know this poem by heart, but it's worth saying the last lines. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And yet it's confirming that he has paused, stopping in the woods. He wouldn't have come up with those lines, I don't think, if he had not paused. There's no shortage of love poems about love in any language and in multiple flavors. How would you write a poem that would end up with this line? What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? I love the painting. Unfortunately, it's not, I stole it, and so it's not in focus because you have to buy the original, but you can see the tenderness of the father and between the father and the love between the father and son. It comes from Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden. He was born in 1913 and captures a time when heat was not regulated by automatic thermostat, also a time when life was not easy. Despite all the unspoken details in the poem about anger, the son expresses a real and intangible love understood in the father's efforts to improve his son's life, and the son's understanding much later of this quiet, immeasurably strong love. Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold, and then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. it keeps going. Excuse me, I lost my place. Speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? More lasting lines. What makes them lasting? What touches us? What the sounds do to touch us in the music? These snippets will remind us that poems continue to challenge what we think we know and feel about something as fundamental as love. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I bet you can all finish this Browning sonnet, which inserts itself in a universal fashion in our hearts. Likewise with this line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It's another timeless jewel with Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Look how many. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace. More lasting lines. Hope is the thing with feathers. I bet you can tell me who the poet is and recite the whole quatrain. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. This one perhaps is less familiar, by Auden. It's a poem which conveys overwhelming grief and tragic loss. And Auden's words are a testimony to the power of love. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. Here, we're going to have an acrostic for hope. The HOPE is fleshed out with the horizontal line. This was written by a writing teacher. Hold on to your dream while mindful of time, optimism required, let your light shine, persistence prevails while some may cast doubt, expectation desired is what it's all about. So more than just a four-letter word, we can flesh it out with an acrostic. I want to quote at this point Robert Frost. He says, the figure a poem makes reminds us that a poem is a clarification of life. And in the case of an acrostic, a clarification of a word. But here I go on with Robert Frost. Clarification of life, not necessarily a great clarification, such as sects and cults are founded on, but in a momentary stay against confusion. There is an uplifting power in poetry's imaginative ability to invent new forms, and these forms actually provide us pattern, and they stay against the chaos of confusion. Another one like acrostics is called A Golden Shovel. It is both the title of a poem by Terence Hayes and a form that he created. It's an end rhyme companion to the acrostic named after the subtitle of the poem, We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks, which she wrote in 1959. Her subtitle, Seven at the Golden Shovel, tells us the setting is outside a pool hall of that name in Chicago. She wrote the poem after actually seeing 7 teens hanging outside this pool hall. Terence Hayes named the form as tribute to her powerful poem. Golden Shovels are poems that are fresh and vital ways of embracing and documenting voices around us that must be heard and felt. Here I put them side by side. Gwendolyn Brooks on the left. We real cool, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing, sin, we thin, Jin, we, jazz, June, we, die soon. You can hear that 3-syllable punch, how we is cut from the verb and jammed by the line break. The rich sound and repeated end-word pattern gave Hayes the idea of stringing the entire poem word by word as end-words as he fills out the story. I show you the first part on the right. The message of both poems addresses a universal we and a warning that separating person from action turns we into a weakened part and parcel of what makes us weep. Hayes wrote in 2 parts and uses these words, weakened and weep. The second part is 10 years after 1981, and it shows an increasing slide downhill in the boys' lives. That's the subject of a whole nother talk, but I show it here to underline how the form is uplifting. The ironic golden, which reminds us of money, sunshine, youth, and shovel, what will be used to dig our grave, as a name for a pool hall, is now a name of a form. Look how the two end the poem. For Gwendolyn Brooks, we die soon. For Hayes, if I should die before I wake, Dawes said to me, it will be too soon. And that was one last long line. So we die soon is the last word. Poetry. It continues. It can be response to experience, but also to art, painting a vivid description. I show here a picture of Anish Kapoor Ascension. I would not have written the poem that responds to it without seeing this ethereal column of vapor ascending inside a church in Venice. Usually, visually, the words I wanted to have drift on the page like smoke, echoing in sound. So here's a snippet of it. Witness a whirlpool of vapor, fan to funnel, a shivering column swirls into long ribbons, higher and higher, to a sense of peace with imperfect, with no urge to fix it. That wouldn't have happened without the picture. Likewise, pairing a picture with a poem is a lot of fun. This is a wonderful picture called Happy Birthday by Marc Chagall, but it also contains a lovely love story. That is his wife, and he is sweeping up to give her a kiss, and that too is the subject of a whole nother talk. What more joyful thing to mark a wedding than to write a poem? It actually has a name. It's an epithalamion, and this is the one that I wrote for my niece. May you fall in love time and time again with the same man who led you to be his bride. May each small detail, each star and flower remind you there is no small thing in love. Now, originally, I had paired that epithalamion with this painting, The Kiss by Klimt. And so here we go for the second part. After each kiss, may you stand together and face the world, no matter what confusion cloaks, veils. Just like the painting, let your finger trust in his. Let his caresses shift to sheaves of gold, luminous in the night. Love indeed means you breathe in 2 countries. And so one more glimpse of Klimt, I pair her poem, 2 countries, where the speaker of the poem is skin. And skin is reminding us about connections, memories, what allows us to go beyond the limits of ourselves. We need to thank the something larger that we encounter in other travelers, and that people go places larger than themselves. This is in keeping with poetry as something surprising you encounter, like an unnamed flower. The image to the right are the winter aconites that come out each spring by the Eastman House. The poem is written by Abby Murray, poet laureate of Tacoma. She also happened to do her MFA with me, and I am very fond of her poetry. She loves happiness in small things. The names of flowers. I don't know what they're called, but they feel like September and smell like a wedding, 100 shades of gold from pineapple to honey, rising from the markdown buckets at Safeway, as if to say, my happiness has never been cheaper, never been this close to the dumpster outside. I bought a handful for $2 and left my former self behind, the one who didn't have a name for what is both vital and unnecessary, but might know joy if she felt it within reach. I love that. What is both vital and unnecessary, but might know joy. Is that not necessary? Another message from poetry. This is a familiar poem by Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. The message is that we accept ourselves no matter how despairing the world may feel. I love her repetitions. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. She goes on repeating the word meanwhile. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, etc. Meanwhile, life does go on. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. What a lovely message, and one to be repeated. Poetry, excuse me, also allows us the uplifting power of empathy, like looking at this painting by Van Gogh of boots. There's something surprising about the power of a person's shoes. Art and word are our tools to sharpen the sense of empathy as we imagine who might fill them. My response to the battered boots calls us to see beyond the appearances, just as he does in paint. It's more than a painting of a pair of boots, perhaps a man's only pair of boots, more than a painting of the riddle of the man who wears them. The open shoestrings sign messages, here, making a spoon, there, stretching a tender line of caress towards the other's toe. It's the ties that tell you they are mindful mates. Poetry is a spoken oral art akin to music. One could use the rhetorical device of chiasmus, where you change the order of the terms and say, poetry is music with personality, and music is poetry with personality. So we all know how a song is uplifting. Lyrics help us stay optimistic, positive. So I share with you a little tone poem to create a gentle, meditative mindset. It's a villanelle, which is a form which has a lot of repeating lines. Listen. Can you hear it in the undertow, in the weave of sound, its rhythmic pace, heel clicked, toe tapped time in each echo? No ordinary telling hinges the stories we row. The oars do not erase as they dip, pull, replace. Can you hear it in the undertow? The clown laughs at whatever grief deals its blow, and music walks on brushes, intones each key's trace, heel clicked, toe tapped time in each echo. Earth does its salsa with the sun, moon in tow, pulling tides that polish sand, pearls, hidden grace. Can you hear it in the undertow? It pulls here now, there now, in the pause. Go look at slow habits that dress the years, lace, heel, clicked, toe tapped time in each echo. What music for dreams sliding into two-toned flow of tide turns, seasons of sea-spawned embrace. Can you hear it in the undertow? Heel clicked, toe tapped time in each echo. And finally, we're towards the end, I have a quartet of slides. This was pictures from the Camino, which some of you may know is called the Camino de Santiago, or the Way of St. James. And it ends in the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in northwest Spain. I was fortunate to travel it for 5 days when I celebrated my 65th birthday. I'd mentioned at the beginning that poetry is a bridge from poet to reader or listener. So I want you to join me now in this tribute to a bridge as a metaphor to poetry, for which we all can give thanks. Bridge, can you see yourself, how beautifully your arch makes a large eye? You connect one shore to another, raise an altar above life-giving water, your reflection making a round of holiness. If you ask why, I understand that the bridge does not answer, rather waits patiently, as now turns to next, then turns to now. Perhaps you will hear the old stones echo, all past except its beauty is gone, nothing is left but blessing. It is wonderful and strange how reading a poem can stay with you. In the next 2 slides, I was thinking of Richard Wilbur's poem, Love Calls Us to the Things of This World. The trumpet vine is busy with love, bees after honey in each belled blossom, fallen petals of blooms strewn, softly strewn. Surprise, light licks the stone, paints the wall red-orange, casts a pink shawl of shadows slipping down the steps. The amazement prepares the day, indeed reminds the spirit to go forth, calls us to love the world. So there I end, and I hope you have enjoyed these words and images. Each week, you can join me in discussing poems. I put the times here at the Pittsford Library, 11:15 in person, 12:30 by Zoom. And starting in December at the Rundell Library, that is 12 noon, not 12L, I missed that. And I've put also my email, kjospe@gmail.com. And please feel free to email me, tell me things or suggest poems, or if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. So I'm stopping the share now, and thank you very much.